What's going on, Akiya Hunters? In this video, I'm going to show you behind the scenes of what it takes to go through the contract day of Japanese real estate transaction. So if you're thinking about buying a property in Japan, this video is for you because I'm going to walk you through what it takes to get to the closing. I'm going to show you the ins and outs of the contract day of a real estate transaction in Japan. There are usually three main steps that you have to go through. The first step, which is super important, probably the most important, is to find the property that you're going to buy, right? This takes the longest typically. If you know what you want, that's great. But, searching for property, viewing properties, and, moving forward, making an offer and getting your offer accepted. That's the first thing, right? So today I'm focusing on the step 2, which is the contract day. So in Japanese real estate transaction, you make an offer to a property and you get your offer accepted, right? And then there is this period between the day when your offer gets accepted and the contract day. For me, it's today. You want to get to that point fairly quickly because that's when you sign the purchase agreement, go through everything with the agent, the seller, and then as a buyer, that's when you put down on the earnest money, which is up to 10%. So once that happens, the deal will happen 99.9% of the time. Okay, so if you were to cancel it, you lose the earnest money, and if the seller cancels it, they'll give you back the earnest money, and then they'll pay you the same amount that you put down for the earnest money. So you get some money if that were to happen. So it's quite rare. Okay, but until this point, it's fair game. If there's another prospective buyer who makes an offer, maybe that's more attractive, and then the seller gets tempted to take it, and then if they do, they can. And anything is possible, right? So today, I'm actually representing a client, and I'm gonna sign a purchase agreement. I got their power of attorney, and then I'm gonna walk you through what that's gonna look like, okay? And then after today, which is step 3, is the closing. So between the contract day after today and closing, when you get the keys, you have to make the full payment to the seller. And then on the closing day, and that's when the registration for the title will happen. And then it's gonna, the property is gonna be under your name, and you get the keys. So today is the step 2 of Japanese real estate transaction. So I'm in the city of Yokohama, and I'm gonna go into real estate company's office to film some of it so that hopefully I can share the context behind what goes through. All right, I'll see you in there. Okay, so this is the office. I'm gonna go to the 5th floor, Kabushiki Gaisha 10. So this is the real estate agent's office today. Okay. Oh my gosh, it is super hot today. I hope the office room is freaking air conditioned because in Japanese buildings, everything is hot. The AC is like super turned on low, but anyway, we'll see. Okay, it's right here.
So I had to stop the camera since I needed to cool off inside and say hello to the agent, Ito-san. But after I stopped sweating, we jumped right into the contract day of this transaction. Contract day is called AkiyaHub in Japanese. It's the day you sign the purchase agreement and go over 重要事項説明書 or 重説, aka property disclosure statement, where you go over everything a buyer needs to know about the property before buying it. And this statement can only be read by a licensed agent in Japan. You might be thinking, what do you mean a licensed agent? Don't all real estate agents have a license? Actually, no. Technically, you can do a lot of things like an agent would as long as you belong to a real estate company that has licensed agents. So a real estate brokerage company needs to have 1 licensed agent per 5 quote-unquote agents without a license. So Ito-san, featured in the last episode, is a licensed real estate agent. And that's why he can read the property disclosure statement to the buyer. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not the actual buyer of a property this time. I'm representing a client and signing all the documents that need to be signed on the contract day on behalf of the actual buyer. Oftentimes, this is what we do. If an overseas buyer cannot be present for the contract day, we get their power of attorney and sign documents for them. As simple as that. How long does the contract day take? This usually takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours. About 30 to 45 minutes to go over the property disclosure statement, another 30 to 45 minutes to go over the purchase agreement, and about 30 minutes to sign and seal all documents and make an earnest money deposit. But what if you don't have a Japanese hanko? Well, if you're a non-resident, you don't need a hanko. You can just use your signature. In fact, you have to be a resident of Japan to use a hanko as an official seal because it needs to be registered in a local ward office. So you can't just get a random hanko and use it as a seal for official documents like this. Now, let's talk about the earnest money deposit. Most sellers prefer receiving the earnest money deposit on the day of the contract day, right after all the documents have been signed. Not before, not the next day. This avoids any possibilities of refunding the money if the buyer, for some reason, decides not to sign the documents on contract day or not receiving the money after they sign the documents. Usually, the earnest money is up to 10% of the purchase price. We got the money from the buyer beforehand, so my company transferred the money to the seller on behalf of the buyer right after I signed the documents. After the payment was made, the seller confirmed the receipt of the earnest money within a few minutes. Now the contract day is officially completed. Next up is the closing day, aka handover day. This is when the buyer sends the rest of the money to the seller. In return, they get the keys to the property. The ownership of the house will officially change to the buyer's name as well.
Okay, so I just spent about an hour and a half at the agent's office and signed some documents, put some hanko in official documents so that the purchase agreement has been binded. And at the same time, we just saw the seller come in, and then the buyer spoke to the seller over Zoom so that, you know, they were able to confirm they are the actual buyer and they're willing to move forward. And after that, the earnest money has been deposited to the seller. So this agreement is moving forward. So what's going to happen is, you know, it's going to move forward, and we're moving forward to the closing. So I think it's going to take about a few weeks. The judicial scrivener that they are going to hire, they're going to request some documents, original documents sent in from where the buyer is. And I think going back and forth, that's going to take about a few weeks. And then on the closing, or by the closing, the remainder of the payment needs to be made to the seller, and that's going to conclude the purchase of the property. So this is the table that we use today. And this is Ito-san, our agent today. He's just organizing all the documents for the buyer. And I'm gonna take that home. And when I see my client, I'm gonna give that to them. And this is his new office. He's a licensed agent, so he's got all the licenses and everything that's shown here. And yeah, he's the one that recommended the off-market deal. After this, it's all about just the closing and just waiting for the closing to happen. Today was a good day, moving forward, and we're almost there with the closing. はい、本日はどうもありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
はい、またよろしくお願いします。
今後ともよろしくお願いします。
はい、失礼します。
ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
All right, so that's it for the contract day. That was the behind the scenes of what happens on the contract day in the Japanese real estate transaction. So now we're gonna wait for the closing day, which is gonna happen probably in about a few weeks, hopefully. And then the transaction will be complete. All right, so I just got done with the contract day for the property that I represented as the power of attorney of the buyer. And it took about an hour and a half total, maybe a couple hours, you know, if I include the meeting with the seller and making the earnest money payment on the spot. So this deal is going to move forward. Very excited for the client to get this finalized in a few weeks. One thing I wanted to share is that I don't do this every time for every transaction, every client. Me physically actually going to these offices and closing. Sometimes it's my team member. Sometimes, you know, we have different ways of doing. But today, since you know, it was a property that was very close to, it was within Yokohama, and it was an agent that we haven't done this type of contract day together, so I wanted to make sure that I represented for that agent as well. But anyway, you know, this is what we do. This is how you can buy a property in Japan without even being in Japan. You know, you can do this all remotely as long as you know what you want and you can make decisions to move forward. And as long as you have someone who can represent you, power of attorney, to sign documents, and you have the ability to pay for the property. So, you know, that's all it takes. It's a very hot summer day, as you can see. Landmark Tower. There's lots of development happening in the heart of Yokohama. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, Please let me know in the comments below your takeaway and what kind of content you want to see for more. And if you enjoyed this episode, I think you're gonna like this video. So watch this video next for more, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.